Hi, good afternoon or evening or even morning. It depends on what time you're watching this. My name is Allan and welcome back to PST Live. Alright guys, today we got a couple of different listening tasks to do. Actually in our first class today we're supposed to be talking about teachers in our listening activity here. In the second class we're going to be doing another listening activity, but it's going to be about a completely different topic. It's about something called the Ice Bucket Challenge. And lastly, we have kind of a discussion in our third class today in our elective. However, I'm not so sure if we're gonna be able to get that done because I think we really need to focus on these listening activities more so than what is in our elective. Anyhow, I don't know how you guys are doing today. Is anybody watching? Does anybody want to give me an answer? How are you today? I'll wait a little bit, and well, I could tell you guys, like yesterday, pretty normal day for me, I guess, during this coronavirus pandemic. Stayed home with my family, did the laundry, got some groceries, did the dishes, did some cooking with my wife. Yeah, pretty normal day. Tried to play some games with my daughter, but besides that, yeah, nothing really special. So I hope you guys, whether you're in Korea or Japan or Vietnam or Mongolia or wherever, I hope you guys are enjoying your life despite this global pandemic, right? But anyhow guys, why don't we get started on our actual listening activity? So please take a look at that sheet that says topic, more teachers needed. Okay, so I think we could make a good guess from the title that this listening activity is going to be about teachers and how the world needs more teachers, right? I know in Canada, for example, that there is kind of a shortage of teachers, right? So anyhow, let's take a look at some of our warm-up activities here. So number one says teachers. What characteristics should a teacher have? Okay. That's a good question. So what characteristics should a teacher have? What personality characteristics should a good teacher have? Well, it just says a teacher, but I'm going to change that, a good teacher. So maybe I can think of some adjectives and write them on the board. Now, of course, this is just my own personal answer. You guys may have your own ideas as well. But the first word that springs to mind here is for a good teacher, they need to be something that starts with a C. Competent. Competent. All right, so I think a good teacher needs to be competent. Now, of course, all these words I'm going to write down here are adjectives, but just in case, I'm going to write ADJ there. Now, competent, what does competent mean? Well, competent means that basically you are good at your job. Right? That you know what to do. If somebody says you are a competent cook, that means you are able to cook competently, that you are able to cook fairly well. You know what you're doing when you are cooking, right? If you are a competent worker, you are a pretty good worker. You know what you're doing, right? So for teachers, of course, one of the most important characteristics that I would say is just that you are competent. It is a basic requirement, but it is important to mention. Now, the opposite of this word is really nice and easy to make because you just add IN. Incompetent. If somebody says you are incompetent, that is quite an insult, right? Because that means you are not good at your job, right? And also, you might be wondering, what is insult? I meet a lot of students around at intermediate level that actually don't know the meaning of insult. So let me explain that as well. Okay, so INSULT. And actually, this is a verb and also a noun, right? To insult somebody or an insult, right? Now, actually, if we think of the opposite word, or the opposite meaning of insult, it might be easier to understand. And the opposite is compliment. And compliment is also a verb and a noun as well, right? If somebody compliments you or gives you a compliment, they say something nice about you. So if I see you on the street and I say like, oh, hey John, nice shoes, right? I am complimenting you, or at least I'm complimenting your choice of shoes, right? Or if I say, yeah, Brian is a very intelligent person, I am complimenting Brian. But on the other hand, if I insult you, right, that means I'm saying something bad about you. So if I say, you know, that guy is an idiot, I'm saying, you know, that guy is stupid, that is an insult, right? And somebody, that guy, he might say like, hey, why are you insulting me? Or what's up with that insult, right? So anyhow, that's insult and compliment, both very useful terms, nouns and verbs. But anyhow, I'm getting away from the topic a little bit. We gotta talk about the characteristics of a good teacher. So yeah, I would say one of the characteristics of a good teacher would be competency, or being competent. Another thing I would like to add here is something that starts with a P, and that would be passionate, right? If you are passionate, you have a lot of passion in whatever you are doing, right? If you're a passionate teacher, that means you care about being a teacher and you care about teaching your students, right? I think in the past, many of us have had lots of good teachers, right? And I'm sure something that's common amongst those good teachers is that they were passionate, right? That they cared about their job and then they cared about teaching their students, right? Now, if we think about the opposite of passionate, it's actually a little bit interesting. A word I would say here that would be a good opposite for the word passionate would be apathetic. Apathetic, and of course that's also an adjective. Now, if you are an apathetic person, an apathetic worker, an apathetic teacher, etc., the meaning of apathetic is that you just don't care, right? You are basically the opposite of a passionate worker. You're apathetic, you're lazy, and you don't care, right? So of course, I've worked in the field of education for a while. I've seen lots of different teachers, and I have seen some teachers who are just simply apathetic. They just don't care anymore. And for these people, I really hope that they kind of quit their job and move on to a different field because they're not passionate about teaching. All right, guys, but other than that, there are lots of other good characteristics or personality traits that we could think of for good teachers, right? What are some other ones that I believe are good? I think it's always good to have a teacher that is at least a little bit sociable, right? They don't have to be extremely sociable, but I do like sociable teachers. And of course, if you are a sociable type of person, that means you like to engage with other people, you like to talk with other people and spend time with them, right? A lot of the good teachers I can think about from my past were kind of sociable. They like talking to their students. They like, you know, delivering new information and making students feel excited, right? And words I can think of that are basically synonyms of the term sociable would be like talkative or extroverted. And of course, both of those are also adjectives, right? And we know the opposite of extroverted is introverted. Now, like I said before though, you don't have to be like a really extroverted person in order to be a good teacher, but I think it's good to at least be sociable in the classroom with your students, right? And I would say for myself, and for a lot of other teachers I've met, a lot of us are introverted, but in the classroom, we tend to be more sociable because we're talking about something that maybe we are passionate about and something that we enjoy, right? Now, other things I could think of. As far as a good teacher is concerned, of course, I think being, well, I was gonna write well, but just being organized in general. Of course, that's another good characteristic of a good teacher. They're on time, they have the right material ready, they have everything set up. It's good to be organized if you want to be a good teacher, right? And what are some other things? I think another good adjective would be caring, right? Especially for teachers who are teaching younger students, right? Especially, young elementary school students. It's good if you have a teacher who's very caring, right? They genuinely care about their students. Anyhow, guys, I think I've kind of got enough adjectives here. I'm sure you guys at home could think of many other adjectives that would describe a good teacher, but I'm gonna probably just stop right there. So we'll continue onwards here with some more warm-up questions. It also says here, who was your favorite teacher growing up? Okay, well, I'll just give you guys an oral example. Who was my favorite teacher growing up? I had lots of good teachers, of course, just like you guys had. But my favorite teacher was my history teacher in grade 11 and grade 12, and his name was Mr. Benjamin. Now, the reason why he was my favorite teacher was because he was very competent, very knowledgeable guy, knew a lot about history, of course, but also he was extremely passionate about history and how we can view history and understand it and hopefully use it in our own lives. But other than that, he was also, of course, organized. He did care about us a little bit, and he was a pretty sociable guy. He loved to set up history clubs, these kind of extracurricular after-school events that we could go to and learn more about, American history, Canadian history, European history, Asian history, etc., etc. So he was just a really great teacher. Okay. Now, the other question we got here says, why was he or she your favorite? Well, already answered that. So let's take a look at number 2, guys. Number 2 says, how can schools be better? That is a tough question, right? And it says, look at the topics below and come up with some ideas about how to improve each one. All right, guys, this looks like something that I should probably write on the board for us. So I'm going to erase these adjectives here. I hope you guys took some notes because a lot of these adjectives are really good. But we'll take a look at this other question together. So give me a moment. All right, and what do we got? Okay, so for number 2, school. And they divided this kind of into categories. Okay, how can schools be better? Teachers, building, lessons, classrooms, technology, exams. Okay, well, maybe I can't think of something for each and every category here, but let's take a look at some. So let's take a look at teachers. All right, now think about it at home. How can we help teachers be better at school, right? How can schools be better? Now, in regards to teachers, maybe I think a good way for teachers to work better would be to provide more training and workshops. Okay, so that's a very simple answer, but I think it makes a lot of sense. In my opinion, if the schools can provide more training for the teachers, of course they'll be better, right? So I think what schools should do is identify which teachers get the best feedback from their students and from maybe their colleagues, and then have these teachers train other teachers, right, when they first start their job. I think that'd be pretty simple, but give them more training and let the better teachers teach the new ones, right? But also provide workshops, right? Now, of course, workshops are provided to a lot of teachers who work in the public school system. And what workshops are is basically like training seminars or training sessions, right? So that teachers can learn about maybe new advances or ideas in the field of teaching, right? So I think if we just give teachers more training, probably will help out teachers a lot, right? Okay, now besides that, the next one we have here is the building itself. Okay, now I can't think of any improvements right off the top of my head as far as the building I work in is concerned. But of course, it's always good to have janitors come and clean up every evening, right? And do a good job. So I think janitors are important. Okay, so I'm gonna write that down just in case you're wondering, like, what are janitors? Let's say here, pay janitors to clean up better. Okay, now, of course, all schools have janitors, whether private or public, right? But janitors, basically, that's just the name of the job where people clean things up, right? And of course, we have janitors as well. But let's say maybe sometimes we pay them a little bit extra, so they do some extra cleaning and they do an extra good job. That'd be awesome. If I think back to my days in junior high school, my junior high school up north in Canada when I was younger, the building itself was quite old, right? Actually, I think way too old, and a lot of the equipment or desks or other furniture we had in the school was very outdated and needed to be replaced. So actually, I'm gonna write that down. So that's not exactly to do with the building, more inside of the building, but I'm gonna write here, replace old equipment and furniture. And I use the word outdated. I'm gonna write that down here at the bottom. Outdated. And that word is an adjective. Outdated means, well, the direct synonym would be kind of like obsolete, or maybe just basically too old, right? So in my junior high school, like, a lot of the desks were basically falling apart, tables were not in good condition. We didn't have good computers in my old junior high school as well. So a lot of the equipment and that kind of stuff was outdated and it needed to be replaced. Anyhow, that's all I can think of for buildings, but actually I should have included that in classrooms. Whoops. Anyhow, guys, let's take a look at the next one. Lessons. Lessons. Okay. Now, actually, this one is harder to think of. How can we improve lessons? But I have a very simple answer here. I would just say, provide more technology. Now, the only problem with this one is that this one gets expensive, right? Like, it's easy to say, like, oh, I wish we had a bigger TV in the classroom, or I wish it was synced up to a really good projector and all this kind of stuff. That's awesome, but it does cost much more money. But I do think that would make some lessons better. So that's all I'm gonna say for that. Then classrooms, actually, I should have put this down in classrooms, so I'm gonna skip that one. And the next term we have is technology. So like I said before, I'm gonna kind of be repeating myself here, but I'm gonna say here, replace outdated / obsolete technology with new tech. So I'm getting a little bit lazy. I didn't want to write down technology. I just wanted to write down tech. So of course I think it's a good idea. Like, if a computer is, how can we say, maybe not 5 years, that might be a little bit too quick, but let's say if it's 7, 8 years old, maybe it's time to throw it out because maybe that computer is outdated or obsolete. Replace it with something new. But again, of course, this does cost money, so that's the downside, right? That's the negative aspect of it. And lastly, we have exams. Now, what could I say about exams? Honestly, I don't have a lot of negative things to say about the exams that I took in university or high school. The one type of exam I didn't like, though, were the types of exam that only have one type of question. And the one type of question that I really hated seeing on exams was multiple choice only. Now, as a teacher, I know why teachers would make multiple choice only exams. And maybe creating multiple choice questions, honestly, is not very easy because you have to make the question and then you have to make 4 or 5 possible answers. That does suck up a lot of time. However, marking multiple choice exams is really, really easy, right? The student either has the right answer or they don't and it's wrong. So, when you're marking multiple choice, it's bang, 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 right, wrong, right, wrong, very, very, very simple, right? But I don't think exams should only contain one type of question. I think they should contain, also true, false questions, some written questions as well, etc. So I think don't include exams with only one type of questions. Because I just think that's not good, in my opinion. Now, of course, guys, you guys might have completely different ideas. That's totally fine. We are just warming up and thinking about things, right? So anyhow, guys, we're finally gonna do some listening here. Now, of course, we're probably gonna listen 2 or maybe 3 times because it's hard to catch this stuff. And I'm gonna be writing down stuff as well. I don't have the answer key. OMG, right? So we're gonna listen here. I'm also gonna be writing some stuff down, and while you're listening, try to fill in those blanks. But one time is not enough. I do understand that. So we will listen at least 2 times. So let's see here, guys. Are you ready? Yup, you look like you're ready. Okay, here we go.
The world needs 69 million more teachers. This is BreakingNewsEnglish.com. A report from the United Nations, the UN, says the world needs another 69 million teachers by the year 2030. The UN agency, UNESCO, made a promise in 2015 that every child in the world is to receive a primary and secondary education within the next 14 years. The agency says a lot of work needs to be done to find the number of teachers for schools. The biggest numbers of teachers needed are in sub-Saharan Africa and Southern Asia. UNESCO says there needs to be a huge effort to get to 69 million teachers. At the moment, UNESCO says there are massive shortages of teachers around the world. There are currently 263 million children who do not go to school. Around 25 million of these might never get an education. The UN report warns that there are shortages of teachers in countries with rising populations. This makes it harder to find enough teachers, as there are more and more children being born. The report says, without urgent and sustained action, the situation will deteriorate in the face of rising demand for education. UNESCO is also worried about the quality of teachers in some countries. In countries like Ghana, Liberia, and Sierra Leone, fewer than 60% of teachers in primary school have been trained. There are also worries about class sizes. The UN says in countries like Malawi, it is common to find over 100 children in classes. This has been a persistent problem for many years. This is Jerry Golland reporting from Ottawa, Canada.
Alright guys, now actually I think the person who read this here spoke quite slowly. That wasn't actually too fast. But despite that, I think we still need to listen to this one more time. So why don't we listen to this one more time? I'm gonna double check what I filled in the blanks with, and you guys continue to try to fill it in with the blanks as well. So here we go again.
The world needs 69 million more teachers. This is BreakingNewsEnglish.com. A report from the United Nations, the UN, says the world needs another 69 million teachers by the year 2030. The UN agency, UNESCO, made a promise in 2015 that every child in the world is to receive a primary and secondary education within the next 14 years. The agency says a lot of work needs to be done to find the number of teachers for schools. The biggest numbers of teachers needed are in sub-Saharan Africa and Southern Asia. UNESCO says there needs to be a huge effort to get to 69 million teachers. At the moment, UNESCO says there are massive shortages of teachers around the world. There are currently 263 million children who do not go to school. Around 25 million of these might never get an education. The UN report warns that there are shortages of teachers in countries with rising populations. This makes it harder to find enough teachers, as there are more and more children being born. The report says, without urgent and sustained action, the situation will deteriorate in the face of rising demand for education. UNESCO is also worried about the quality of teachers in some countries. In countries like Ghana, Liberia, and Sierra Leone, fewer than 60% of teachers in primary school have been trained. There are also worries about class sizes. The UN says in countries like Malawi, it is common to find over 100 children in classes. This has been a persistent problem for many years. This is Jerry Allan reporting from Ottawa, Canada.
Okay guys, now after listening to it a second time, I'm sure that you got a lot of the blanks filled in here, although maybe you didn't catch everything. However, despite that, we're not gonna play it one more time. Let's take a look at what goes in the blanks here. So, and there is some difficult vocabulary, so I might stop once in a while and take a look at some vocab with you guys. But getting started here, it says, a report from the United Nations, the UN, says the blank, blank, blank. Now we're actually looking for 3 words here. And then after that it says 69 million teachers by the year 2030. Okay, well basically we were talking about the world. And the world needs what? It needs another 69 million teachers by the year 2030. So that is a lot of extra teachers that are needed, right? 69 million extra teachers by the year 2030. And of course, we're in 2020 now. That's only 10 years away. Yikes. Anyhow, moving on to the second blank here, it says the UN agency UNESCO made a promise in 2015 that every child in the world blank a primary and secondary education within the next 14 years. So what did they promise here, right? They made a promise in 2015 that every child in the world now we got 3 words here, and basically it is to get or to receive, right? So every child in the world is to receive a primary and secondary education within the next 14 years. So that's a really big promise that UNESCO is making, right? They're saying by the year 2030, every child around the world should be getting a primary and secondary school education. Ugh. I don't know if they should have promised that. That's a big thing to promise. Okay, anyhow, moving on to the third blank we got here. The agency says a lot of work needs to be done to, and again, blank, 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 of teachers for schools, right? So they need an additional 69 million teachers, right? And of course, they're gonna need to find these teachers. So that's what that's the first word we're looking for here, is to find the numbers. So to find the not numbers, but number. To find the number of teachers for school. So yeah, they need to do a lot of work in order to find all of these teachers that they're gonna need for these students, right? Okay, but let's move on to number 4. So after that we have The biggest number of teachers needed are in sub-Saharan Africa and Southern Asia. Okay. UNESCO says there needs to what? Now actually we got 4 blanks here. 4 blanks to get the 69 million teachers. There needs to be what? There needs to be a really big. What's another word for big? Of course you're thinking, now actually Donald Trump loves this word. He usually mispronounces it though. He kind of pronounces it with a Y. He kind of says like huge, right? But we're looking for huge. Needs to be a huge what? There needs to be a huge effort, right? In order to find 69 million teachers. So they gotta make a really big effort in order to find all of these teachers. Okay, but let's move on to number 5. At the moment, UNESCO says there are blank of teachers around the world. Now actually, one of the words we're looking at here in the blank, I did bring up earlier in the warm-up. So one of the words, actually both of these words here are kind of harder terms. Both of them are really good though. There's someone with M, and then there's also this one. So this one, kind of a synonym of this one here, has a similar meaning to huge or really big. It is massive, right? If you use the word massive, if you use this adjective here, you're saying something is really big, right? So there is a massive, and then this word here. Basically, this means lack of, not enough of, right? Now, actually, let me write lack, because that's kind of a good one. There is a lack of something. I have a lack of caffeine, right? I need more caffeine. If there is a caffeine this, I'm gonna go insane, right? And the word I'm looking for here is shortage. Now, shortage means there's not enough of something, right? There's a severe lack of that thing. So if there is a caffeine shortage, let's say there's a coffee shortage in Canada, right? You know, tomorrow I wake up and I'm like, oh my God, I'm out of coffee. That's okay, I'll go shopping. But then when I'm walking to the grocery store, I see an update on my news application and it says, you know, worldwide coffee shortage. Oh my God, that's gonna kill me, right? Because I need caffeine. Yeah. So massive shortage, or shortage as in lack of, not enough. So anyhow, we know that there is a massive shortage of teachers around the world. There's just not enough teachers, right? So let's move on to number 6 though. There are currently 263 million children who do not go to school. Wow, that is a huge number of kids that don't go to school, right? That's terrible. Around 25 million of these might blank education. And this statistic is really sad, but it says around 25 million of these might never get an education. So that's what we're looking for here. Never get an education. So yeah, that's really sad. There are so many children, 263 million children that are currently not going to school, and an additional 25 million or 25 million of these 263 million kids may never get an education. And that's really sad. And from what I know from just reading the news is that a lot of these kids who are never getting an education tend to be girls, right? Because unfortunately in a lot of poorer countries or developing countries, more emphasis is put on boys, and maybe that's because they carry on the family name, but of course that's not fair, you know, blah blah blah. Anyhow guys, let's move on to number 7. It says the UN report warns that there blank blank teachers in countries with rising populations. So sounds like countries that are relatively poor, and they also have a quickly growing population. And again, we're looking for this word again. So the UN reports that there are shortages of teachers, right? So basically, again, they're saying that in countries that are poor, with very fast growing populations, there are not enough teachers, right? There are definite shortages, and that's too bad. So moving on to number 8 though. It says here, this makes it harder to find teachers, blank, more and more children being born. So what we're looking for here, none of this vocabulary here is difficult, but it says, as there are more and more children being born. So it's tough for these countries, right? Because there are so many kids being born all the time, and they already have this major or massive shortage of teachers, and they can't find more, right? But moving on to number 9, says the report says, without urgent and sustained action, the situation will deteriorate. Blank, rising demand for education. Now this is an interesting expression here. Actually, we're looking for 4 words, and it says in the something with an F of. Now basically it's in the, what is this? Of course it's my face. It's in the face of this rising demand for education, right? So in the face of means, towards this problem, right? So that's an interesting expression there. But there's also some really good vocab here within that quote. The report says without urgent. Okay, so let's think about that word here for a second. Urgent, and that is an adjective. If something is urgent, it's something that needs to be done immediately or as soon as possible. If your boss comes and gives you a report and says, hey Brian, this is urgent, you need to finish it ASAP, your boss is trying to tell you that this is really important and needs to be done immediately, right? So within this quote again, it says without urgent, without, very quick, without action as soon as possible, and sustained action. So now we got another good word here. Sustained. So sustained means like kind of continuous action, not just, starting and then stopping. It means we have to continue this action for a long period of time. So continuous action. So without urgent and sustained action, the situation will, and then we got, another pretty good word here, deteriorate. And deteriorate basically means to decline or to decrease. The situation is deteriorating. It's getting worse, right? And that's what deteriorate means. Okay, but lots of good words there. But moving on, guys, to our next blank, number 10. What do we have here? It says, UNESCO is also worried about something else, teachers in some countries. Okay, so they're worried about this massive shortage of teachers, but they're also worried about the queue of teachers in some countries, right? Now, of course, they're worried about the quantity, right? Quantity means the number, but this word here is not quantity, although it does kind of start the same way. Q-U-A. They're more worried about the quality of these teachers as well. Now, I'm pretty sure you guys understand what quality means, but of course it's a good term. Quality means like how good something is, right? Sometimes we say, we can easily modify this by adding like high or low, right? BMW is a high quality car, or Tesla is a high quality car. On the other hand, wait, what is a low quality car? Okay, no, I'm not gonna think about cars, something else. The items that you can buy in a dollar shop, like in Canada we have the dollar store and they sell everything for $1, but a lot of those products are very low quality. Anyhow, of course, UNESCO is worried about this massive shortage of teachers, but They're also worried about the quality of these teachers as well. Like, are they doing a good job? Are they competent? Are they actually passionate? Do they have material, right? So they're worried about the quality of these teachers. Anyhow, moving on to number 11, it says, in countries like Ghana, Liberia, and Sierra Leone, fewer than 60% of teachers in primary school have been trained. So it sounds like there hasn't been enough training yet. There are also worries, and then we got number 11. So let's see here. We'll skip the blank. There are also worries, blank, the UN says, in countries like Malawi, it is common to find over 100 children in classes. Okay. So it's common to find that there, like in one class, there are way too many students, right? So that's basically related to what goes into our blank in number 11. It says there are also worries about, because when you talk about worries, you use the preposition about class sizes. About class sizes, the UN says, because in countries like Malawi, it's common to find over 100 kids in one class. That's a lot of kids in one classroom. That would really freak me out if I had to teach 100 kids in one class, right? No wonder why those teachers, no wonder why there's not many teachers. A lot of them probably see like, oh my God, I have to teach a class with 100 kids? No, I'd rather be a farmer, right? Anyhow, guys, last one here says, this has been a persistent problem. And basically our last blank means like for a long period of time, but it's nice and easy. It says for many years. And again, that term, that other term here, persistent. Pretty good word here. If something has been a persistent problem, it means this has been a problem for a long time, a continuous problem, right? Kind of related to sustained, but not exactly the same. Anyhow, guys, now after going over that, after going over the blanks, we can finally move on and take a look at some of our comprehension questions here. So take a look at the other side of the page, and we've got a bunch of them here. Now what I should do, of course, is I would like to write down example answers for you guys. So I'm just gonna erase the board, but I hope you guys got all of the blanks, and I'll erase this, and we'll take a look together. Okie dokie. Alright, so we got it done. So let's take a look here, guys. I think because I did go over this kind of slowly and reread over it, I think this should be a bit easy for you. So number one here says, by when does the world need another 69 million teachers? So when does the world need an additional 69 million teachers? We're looking for a year. So if we look back at the text, it's pretty easy to find this. It says, very first sentence, a report from the United Nations says the world needs another 69 million teachers by the year 2030. So if we want to answer this in a very short way, we could just write by the year 2030. And there we go. So we could, if you wanted to write a longer answer to this, you could say, the world needs another 69 million teachers by the year 2030. So maybe some of these I'm going to write, give a short answer. Some of these I'll give a longer answer. But let's move on to number 2. What did UNESCO make to children in 2015? Okay, now I can remember what they made to children in 2015, but how about you guys? So taking a look back, it says the UN agency, UNESCO, made a promise in 2015 that every child in the world is to receive a primary and secondary education within the next 14 years. So I would say they, and by they I mean UNESCO, made a promise that every child would receive a primary and secondary education by 2030. Okay, now like I said before, that's a big promise to be making. I don't know if they can really fulfill that. But anyhow, so that's a nice promise though. Let's take a look at number 3, guys. Number 3, where is the biggest number of teachers needed besides Asia? Okay, now that's a good question because we got that word there, besides, right? Now, you guys know what besides means. Of course, besides means you're kind of like next to something, right? I am standing besides the board, right? So it can be about the proximity or basically like location of somebody in relation to a person or item, right? But besides has another meaning, and this is actually quite useful. Besides can also basically mean except for. Okay, so think about it like replace besides with except for. Think about this question again. Where is the biggest number of teachers needed except for Asia, right? So there were 2 major regions that were mentioned around the world where they need more teachers, where there's a huge shortage of teachers, right? And those places were in Asia, but also let's take a look again. What else did they mention? The biggest number of teachers needed are in sub-Saharan Africa and Southern Asia. Okay, so because we're not talking about Asia, because it said besides Asia, we know the answer is sub-Saharan Africa. Where is the big number of teachers? In, I'm just going to write, in sub-Saharan, now actually that's an area, so I should put a capital S there. Sub-Saharan Africa. Okay. All right, guys, let's move on to our next question, though. When did Unicef say there were massive shortages of teachers? Okay, so take a look back. When did UNESCO say that? UNESCO says there needs to be a huge effort to get the 69 million teachers. At the moment, UNESCO says there are massive shortages of teachers around the world. There are currently Okay, so this question is a bit strange, eh? When did UNICEF say there were massive shortages of teachers? When did they say that? Well, basically they said that when this report was issued, right? And they made this promise in 2015. So I'm guessing they said this around the same time. This question is a little bit funny, but not ha-ha funny, because the answer is actually not so clear. When did UNICEF say there were massive shortages of teachers? I would say they said this in 2015, because that's when the report was made, right? Okay, so we got number 4 done. We got time for maybe one more question, then we're gonna take a break, guys. So let's take a look at number 5 as well. Number 5 here, how many children around the world might never get an education? Can you guys remember what number that was, right? They said there were 263 million kids around the world who do not have an adequate education or access to adequate education, but they said there was another 25 million who may never get an education. So let's write that down. About 25 million children may never get an education. And that's really sad, right? Because if they don't get an education, that's gonna limit their possibilities in life, right? They're not gonna be able to become doctors and dentists and lawyers and you know, all those good things, right? So anyhow, guys, let's take a break though. After the break, we will continue with these comprehension questions and we will take a brief look at the discussion together before we move on to our next listening activity. But I'm gonna take a break. I'll see you guys in 10 minutes. Okay guys, welcome back to Live PST. What we're going to be doing here is just kind of continuing what we were doing in the previous class. So we're going to be continuing onwards with those comprehension questions. So let's just get restarted, right? And let's take a look at number 6. So number 6 here says, what are there more and more of in countries with rising populations? Okay, so let's take a look back. What are there more and more of? So I think this is in the second paragraph here. The UN report warns that there are shortages of teachers in countries with rising populations. This makes it harder to find enough teachers as there are more and more children being born. Okay, so back to the question again. What are there more and more of in countries with rising populations? There are more and more children, right? There are more and more children. And I'm going to add something to this, and hopefully this will be also kind of a useful word for you guys. There are more and more children, and thus, there are shortages of teachers. Okay, so I just wanted to use this word thus because thus is not a word that's as commonly used anymore, but I use it a fair amount. Thus has basically the same meaning as therefore. And therefore, or thus, there are shortages of teachers, right? There are more and more children. Okay, but let's move on, guys, to our next one. Our next one here is number 7. We have, what does the report say there is a rising demand for? What is there a rising demand for? So, continuing here, the report says, without urgent and sustained action, the situation will deteriorate in the face of rising demand for education. So there's our answer. There's an increased demand for education. So there is a rising demand for education. So rising demand means, like, of course, if there is a demand for something, it means people want something, right? Demand is also kind of an interesting word. You could use this in your own daily life, because if you say, I demand something as a verb, it means I really want this thing, give it to me, right? But anyhow, there is a rising demand for education because there is a shortage of teachers. Okay, but moving on to comprehension question number 8. We have, what is UNESCO worried about the quality of? Okay, we talked about that quite a bit when we were filling in the blanks. They are, of course, UNESCO, they are worried about the Q of T. So take a look back in the actual text here. It says, in countries like Ghana, Liberia, and Sierra Leone, fewer than 60% of teachers in primary school have been trained. So a lot of those teachers have not been trained properly. So there are also worries about class sizes. Whoops, actually, I'm moving onwards. I should have went backwards. The sentence previous to that one said, UNESCO is also worried about something of something. They're worried about the quality of teachers. So maybe they're worried about their qualifications and the amount of training that they have received, because 60% of those teachers did not receive an adequate amount of training. Okay, moving on to number 9 though. Number 9 here we have, how many of Sierra Leone's primary school teachers have been trained? Okay, so again, that goes back to that number that we looked at previously. In countries like Ghana, Liberia, and Sierra Leone, fewer than 60% of teachers in primary school have been trained. Ugh. So fewer than 60% would mean 60% or less, or actually it just means not or, it just means less than 60%. So if we look back at our question, it says how many of Sierra Leone's primary school teachers have been trained, is less than 40% have been trained properly, right? Less than, wait, was it Liberia or Sierra Leone? Less than 40% of teachers in Sierra Leone, did I spell that correctly? Yes. Leone, less than 40% of teachers in Sierra Leone have been trained properly. And properly, there's another good word. If they have been trained properly, they have done it the right way. If they have not been trained properly, they haven't been trained the correct way, right? But anyhow, guys, number 10, our very last comprehension question we have, how many children per class is it common to find in Malawi, right? So take a look back. There are also worries about class sizes, the UN says. In countries like Malawi, it is common to find over 100 children in classes. So there's our answer. How many children per class is it common to find in classes in Malawi? It is common to find classes with, and was it over? Yeah, with over 100 students. Yikes. So it's common to find classes with over 100 students. Well, let's add here, in Malawi. Yikes, that's a lot of students in one class. Like I said before, if I had to teach a class with 100 young students, oh man, I would die, right? Not actually die, I guess that's too much, but anyhow. Alright guys, so we got our comprehension questions done. They look pretty good. We also have some discussion questions, so what I was thinking is that I will take a look at these and give you an oral example. But of course, it'd be good for you guys at home to think of your own answers, maybe type them out or write them out, right? So let's take a look at discussion question number 1. What did you think when you read the headline? Okay, so the headline, of course, is the title. Topic, more teachers needed. Okay, so what did I think when I read that title, when I saw more teachers needed? All right, well, I thought, yes, that's probably true. Like I said, I'm here in Canada. Canada is a developed country, you know, first world country. We're pretty well off here, but there's even a shortage of teachers in Canada, especially for classes that require teachers with technical skills. So I thought, yeah, when I first read that headline, I thought, you know, yeah, that's probably true, right? And if it's true in Canada, it's probably a lot worse in, I don't know, maybe countries in South America or Africa or South Asia. Anyhow, let's take a look at number 2. Good question, number 2. What springs to mind when you hear the word teacher? Okay, now, spring to mind. Basically, that means what pops into your mind, what image or idea enters your brain when you hear the word teacher. So what springs to mind when you hear the word teacher? So it might just be a word, or it might be a image that comes into your mind when you hear the word teacher. So for me, what pops into my mind? Now, of course, I've been working in education for a while. I've met a lot of different teachers. So when I hear the word teacher, what usually pops into my mind is an image of a coworker or former coworker. Maybe of someone that I thought was a really good teacher, right? I might also think about some of the teachers that I had in the past who were really good at their jobs, right? Now, maybe what words do I associate with the word teacher when it springs into my mind? Usually, I think we like to imagine that most teachers are passionate, so the word passion or passionate might enter my mind. Maybe you guys have seen some movies about really good teachers in the past, because there's a lot of those types of movies. So yeah, I think the word passionate would pop into my mind, and also an image of my current or former co-workers or colleagues who are teachers would pop into my mind. Okay, let's take a look at number 3. What do you think about what you read? Me? What do you think about what you... Little bit brain dead today, guys. Number 3. What do you think about what you read? What do I think about what I read there? Okay. Well, to begin with, okay, let me give you a word here. Actually, let me erase this first, because I might want to give you guys some vocabulary as I look at these questions with you. Okay, so what did I think about when I read this, or when I listened to this and then I read it? My answer might be a little bit more complex. Because first off, I think when you read this type of article, you might think, oh, that's too bad, right? That's too bad, at least the United Nations is trying, right? But, okay, here is a good adjective. The adjective is optimistic, and that is related to its noun, which is an optimist, right? He is an optimist, or he is optimistic. On the other hand, the opposite of this, the antonym, starts with a P, and it is pessimistic, and a pessimist. Now, actually, I should also add one more thing here, which is related to these two terms here, which is realistic, or very similar to pragmatic, and a realist. Anyhow. So, getting back to this, we tend to believe that there are two types of people in the world. And we tend to believe that there are optimistic people and there are pessimistic people. I think there are 3 types of people. There are optimistic people, there are pessimistic people, and there are realistic people, right? Or people that at least believe they are a realist, right? But anyhow, if you are an optimistic person, you tend to have more of a positive mindset, right? If you're optimistic, you think tomorrow is going to be better, right? And even though things right now might be tough, you might think, we'll get over this, things will get better. So on the other hand, of course, a pessimistic person, they tend to have more of a negative view of the world, right? They think like, maybe tomorrow isn't going to be better, right? Maybe things are going to get worse, right? Now, again, realistic is not, it's related to this, but not really directly, but a realistic or pragmatic person, they try to see the situation not in a negative or positive way, they just try to see it in a real way, right? But anyhow, we usually think you're either an optimist or you're a pessimist. And unfortunately, I'm a little bit more pessimistic than I am optimistic. I try to think of myself as a realistic person, but I think I'm actually kind of pessimistic. So, anyhow, when we were reading this and listening to this, I did think, well, that's too bad for those kids in sub-Saharan Africa and South Asia and all this kind of stuff. And I do feel bad for them. Now, on the other hand, what I did have a little bit of trouble with was the fact that UNESCO made this big promise, right? They promised in 2015 that every child in the world would receive a primary and secondary education within the next 14 years. So they said, hey guys, by the year 2030, every kid in the world is gonna get a primary and secondary education. So, to me, I think that is a huge promise that cannot be fulfilled. Now, why do I think that? I think that because I'm kind of pessimistic, that's true, but I also think I'm realistic at the same time. The United Nations is a great organization, and so is UNESCO, But we have seen over the past 10, 20, 30 years that the United Nations, while they have these very huge ambitions and they want to help the world, they are not often capable of being able to deliver what they have promised, right? And we can even see that in just the recent past right now with the coronavirus pandemic. The WHO, the World Health Organization, in my opinion, did not do a very good job. So when a UN agency like UNESCO makes a big promise like this, I'm doubtful. I just don't think they're gonna be able to fulfill it. So, like I said before, I do think this article here, I think, whoa, that's too bad for these kids. I really do feel bad for them, because if they don't get an education, they're gonna have a hard life. But at the same time, I think like the United Nations should not be making promises like that. If they were being more realistic, maybe they should have said by the year 2050, right? Give themselves more time. But that other word I brought up is doubt. Well, there's doubt and then there's doubtful, right? Now, to doubt something, the verb form of this means to, if you doubt somebody or you doubt something, it means you don't really believe in them, or you have reservations, you don't exactly trust them, right? And doubtful is the adjective. I'm doubtful of the United Nations. I kind of doubt them, although I think it's a nice thing to try to do. Okay, but moving on to number 4, how important are teachers? Well, I'm a teacher, so of course I think teachers are the most important thing in the world. But I do think that teachers are a very important part of society and civilization. If we don't have teachers, who's gonna teach our kids? Are you gonna teach your own kids? Ugh. Do you have the time? Of course you don't, right? So teachers, I think, are essential, right? They are necessary, they are needed. So that's a good word too, essential. And that's a word we've been using a lot in Canada recently during this coronavirus pandemic. Essential, something that is needed. But moving on to the next one, why don't more people become teachers? That's a good question. Why don't more people become teachers? Well, I would say because teaching, it can be a lot harder than it looks. It takes a lot of effort. It takes time to become a teacher. And while the pay can be decent, decent like as in pretty good. Let's write that down. Decent, that's another good, wow, so many good adjectives today, eh? Decent, as in adequate, or basically it means like pretty good, right? And you gotta remember, what is the meaning of pretty good? The pretty good is not like good, right? That's good, and that's pretty good. So if it's decent, it's pretty good. It's not fantastic, right? So the pay is decent, and the hours are not too bad, but there's a lot of things that teachers do that, parents or other people don't realize, like you stay after school and you do a lot of marking. Yes, you get that summer vacation, hooray, right? But teachers do have to spend a lot of time at home marking things or preparing material. And then also you have to deal with a fairly large group of people, whether you're teaching adults or kids, right? You're dealing with a large group of people. Sometimes those people have behavioral problems. So you're not just delivering information or teaching things. Sometimes you're dealing with kids who have major behavioral problems. Maybe they have ADHD and stuff like that. So I think for a lot of people, when they look at that job realistically and they think about becoming a teacher, it can kind of be a turnoff, right? And a turnoff as in like, they're not interested, because it can be a lot of extra work. And there are other jobs, like let's say you're like, oh, I'm gonna become a financial analyst, or I'm gonna become a stockbroker, or something like that. Of course, you're probably gonna make more money. But anyhow, maybe that's why some people don't wanna become teachers. Anyhow, let's take a look at number 6. What can UNESCO do to get the teachers it needs? Ooh, okay, yeah. Now that kind of comes back to the point I made earlier as to why I'm pessimistic about this promise that UNESCO made, right? Now, of course, in that article, it doesn't say anything about how UNESCO is going to get these teachers. And that's why, again, I'm kind of doubtful of UNESCO. So what do I think UNESCO could do? I think UNESCO would have to set up a special charity or NGO to collect money in order to make sure that these teachers are paid a certain amount and that their schools are given enough of a budget in order to get enough material, whether that's books or maybe be able to invest in technology. So basically, I think a lot of this comes down to money. If UNESCO can get enough money to attract enough passionate, capable people, I think they will be okay. But I think that's really, really, really tough. Like they said, they need 69 million more teachers. Take 69 million and multiply that by, I don't know, thousands and thousands of dollars. That's gonna be billions and billions of dollars. I just don't think UNESCO is gonna be able to get that much money. Anyhow, guys, moving on to next one. Number 7, how would the world be different if everyone had an education? That's an interesting question. How would the world be different if everybody in the world had an education? Well, I do think the world would be a lot more stable, and I think there would be less crime. Because if people have more of an education, the kids are busier, they're in school, they're learning something, and hopefully they can get a better job, right? And thus, I think a lot of kids and adults would be less likely to commit crime. So I think you can see in countries, like maybe in your country, like in Korea or Japan, for example, where, you know, basically every kid goes to school, like Canada too, those kids are too busy to commit crime. Actually, I think that's a really interesting thing to look at. If you looked at Canada versus Korea, for example, or Canada versus Japan, and you looked at crime amongst juveniles or crime amongst teenagers, I'd say in Canada, the crime rate for teenagers would be higher. Now, why might that be? Well, there's probably lots of different cultural reasons, and you know, it's actually a pretty complicated question. But of course, most teachers, or not most teachers, but most teenagers, as in 98% of teenagers in Canada go to school, just like they do in Korea and Japan. However, school here usually ends at about 3 or 3:30. After school is done, some children or teenagers may go to an extracurricular activity. They may have soccer, basketball, badminton, baseball, or they may have piano lessons or something like that. But not every day, right? And it depends on the parents. If the parents are wealthier, for sure, they're going to put their kids in some kind of sport or, I don't know, piano lessons, something like that. But if the parents are a little bit poor, they may not have the money for that. So, and maybe poor parents, they're both working. And so when the kid is done school, this teenager, let's call him Jimmy, you know, maybe he just goes home and watches TV and maybe does his homework. Or maybe he goes and meets somebody and they go do something bad together, right? Now, I lived in Korea before and I know something about Japan. And I know that in high school, it's basically kind of hell for you guys in Korea and Japan, right? You study until way late at night because you got to take this exam, and this exam is so important for your lives, right? So basically, I think a lot of people in Korea and Japan, a lot of the teenagers, are so busy that they don't have time to commit crimes, right? Yeah. So actually, that's a good thing and a bad thing, because I know it's really stressful. But if you think about Canada's case, yes, we do have a relatively low crime rate. You know, crime is not a huge problem here, but it is higher than countries like Japan and Korea. And I think it's because in Japan and Korea, the teenagers just don't have enough time to even commit crime. Whereas in Canada, maybe teenagers coming from families with a poorer background, they have more free time. And like we say in Canada and America, this is a good expression, yes, it is kind of a tough one. We say, idle hands are the devil's plaything. Is that correct? Idle hands are the devil's plaything. Yes, I think that is correct. Now the meaning of this, idle means like not occupied, not busy. So idle hands are the devil's plaything. This expression means that when you have too much free time, you might do something bad, right? And I believe it's true. I think a lot of teenagers with too much free time on their hands tend to hang out with maybe some other bad teacher, or not teachers, other bad teenagers, and they might do something bad. Anyhow, guys, blah, 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 I'm talking too much. Let's move on to the next question. No, oh yeah, but number 7, the conclusion is, I think if everybody had an education, the crime rate would be lower, and I think things would just be nicer in general. But number 8, what did you think of your education? Good question. So I'm just gonna focus on primary and secondary education in Canada. My experience, of course, was pretty good. I went to a Catholic elementary school, which is good and bad. So because it was a Catholic school, we did have religion class at least once or twice a week, which I think is not very useful, but if you're religious, of course, it would be good. But I think my education was pretty good. As far as math and English were concerned, like quite good. Learned a lot about history when I was in elementary school, so that was really great. And because it was a Catholic elementary school, they also really focused on manners and how to act properly in society. So for example, if I walked by my teacher and I didn't say excuse me, I'd get in trouble, right? She might grab my ear. And even though in Canada, corporal punishment or physically punishing students is illegal, even when I was a kid, it was a Catholic school, so there was some physical punishment. They would grab our ears or maybe smack us with a ruler. Not too hard, but still. But yeah, they taught us very good manners, so I appreciate that. I think that was pretty good. When I went to public school for junior high school and later senior high school, the quality of education was also pretty good, but because I was in a rural countryside school, it was not as good as it would have been if I had been living in Vancouver. So when I was in high school, I always kind of thought, wow, I really wish I was a high school student in Vancouver because I think they get a better education. And I'm pretty sure that's the same in your guys' country as well. If you go to school in the countryside, usually the quality of education is not as good as the quality of education in a large urban area. Anyhow, but overall, I think my education was pretty good. Number 9, why is there a shortage of teachers? Well, that question is too hard. And it's kind of related to earlier questions that I already answered. I think because being a teacher is not always viewed as a great job. Although the pay is okay, it requires a lot of energy. You should be passionate. And if you aren't, like I've seen some teachers who are just not very competent, not capable, and they get burnt out and they quit. So I think there's a shortage of teachers because it's not the easiest job. Anyhow, number 10. What advice do you have for teachers? So how about you guys? What advice do you have for teachers? My advice for teachers would be, don't take things too seriously. Now, that sounds bad if you think about it, but what I mean here is like whatever happens in the classroom, some student laughs at you, right? Or some students aren't paying attention. For a lot of teachers, this makes them very self-conscious. They think like, why is that student using bad language? Or why is this student sleeping in the class, right? My opinion is don't let that get to you. Be serious about your job, but don't let it affect you personally. When you leave work, you must leave work, and you must try to remain calm. Do not take things personally. Of course, this is general advice for any job. But yeah, don't take things too personally. Do your best, but don't get emotional about it because yeah, that's never a good idea in the workplace anyhow. All right guys, but that is good enough for this listening activity. That went on, I think, a little bit too long. So we got to move on to actually our next listening activity. So I think, guys, this is probably going to take the rest of this block, but also the next class. So I don't think we'll be doing the elective today, and that's fine because this stuff is more useful. So I would like you guys to take a look at this page here. It says Pop Culture, the Ice Bucket Challenge. Okay, now hopefully you guys can remember the Ice Bucket Challenge because it's not too long ago. Maybe 5 years ago? Actually, I can't remember. No, 5, 6 years ago? Anyhow, I'm gonna erase this stuff off the board and we're gonna take a look at this other listening activity here. Now, before we get into this, we have to look at some warm-up questions. So, let's take a look at these warm-up questions. Now, I'm tired of being cold. Let's warm up. Oh, terrible joke. All right. So guys, take a look at our warm-up questions here. Number 1, it says Google or look up this disease. Ooh, so talking about disease here. And it says amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, or better known as Lou Gehrig's disease. So I think you guys should do that right now. Go on Google and look up Lou Gehrig's disease. I'll give you a moment because I really want to drink some water. Oh yeah, okay, all right, so hopefully you've looked it up. I know a little bit about Lou Gehrig's disease. Of course, I had to refresh my memory. I did take a quick look at it before the class. But I know Lou Gehrig was actually a very famous baseball player, I think in the 1940s in the United States. And he got this disease, right? And that's why they called it Lou Gehrig's disease, because he was like the most famous person to have this disease. Now, honestly, I don't know too much about it, but I do know that it's a pretty horrible disease, and I believe it attacks your nervous system, and it affects your spine. And I think it affects the ability for your muscles to communicate with your brain, and therefore it limits your mobility. But actually, I should take a quick look. What is Lou Gehrig's disease? The life of Lou Gehrig's. Oh, May is ALS Awareness Month, so that's kind of perfect. It's May, and it's time to focus on Lou Gehrig's disease, although we're already focused on, you know, another major disease going around the world right now. As motor neuron disease. Lou Gehrig's disease causes the death of neurons controlling voluntary muscles. Okay, so it causes the death of these neurons that communicate with your muscles. So yeah, it limits mobility. And a lot of famous people have been affected by this and still lived fairly decent lives. But it's, I think, a terrible disease that, you know, can really cause a decrease in the quality of life for people. Anyhow, let's take a look at number 2, guys. It says, what are the people doing in the picture below? So take a look at that picture. What are those people doing? And you can see they're holding up a bucket, and they are dumping water on their head. Now, we know the title is Ice Bucket Challenge. So I think they have a bucket full of ice water, and they are pouring it or dumping it on their heads. Now, why would they do that? Are they crazy? Who knows? We'll probably find out. But just in case, okay, pour. I think you guys know the verb pour, to pour something, pour a drink. Could you pour me a drink? No, you don't have one, that's too bad. Anyhow, pour, and you could also sometimes use the verb dump. Dump has kind of a negative connotations, but yeah, to dump something on somebody or yourself, or to pour something, right? So they're dumping ice water on their heads or over their heads. Yikes. Okay, number 3. Are there any current trends on the internet now? Ooh, that's a good question. Okay, so what we're gonna be talking about, guys, the Ice Bucket Challenge was a huge trend 5, 6 years ago. And I remember that trend. But there's always a lot of different internet trends, right? And I'm sure they might be a little bit different whether you're living in Korea, Japan, Brazil, you know, Spain, etc. But there are lots of internet trends that come out of the United States and many different countries, but usually the US, at least for Canada, Okay, there was a very, very, very dangerous and very stupid trend that started in the past 2 months. And I believe it was called the coronavirus trend. And so I think it was some famous YouTubers or people who wanted to be famous. They were going outside in public, I think with a GoPro, and they were filming themselves going to kind of dangerous hotspots and then touching things or sometimes putting their tongue on something. And I think the idea of that was like, I think it was called Coronavirus Challenge, was to try to show people like, oh, you don't need to be scared of the coronavirus, you know, ha ha ha, this is not real. But then some of those people who did that got coronavirus, and I think one of them died. So I think that put an end to that terrible trend, the coronavirus trend. But there have been a lot of other light-hearted internet trends in the past decade or two. I remember there used to be one called planking. I'm gonna write that down, but it's not really useful. So this was a popular one for, I think, about a year. Planking was just laying down straight in an awkward place. So there would be people planking on their desk or planking on top of a car, and I thought it was kind of funny, but some people, you know, some people always take things too far, right? They take things to a limit, and then they were planking in dangerous areas, and some people got injured or arrested. I think somebody was planking on top of a policeman's car, and then of course the policeman arrested them. So yeah, that was another kind of stupid internet trend. But I really wish I could talk to you guys right now and get to know more about what internet trends have been popular in your country recently. It's kind of an interesting topic. So, but let's move on, guys. Number 4, do you know the ALS or Lou Gehrig's disease ice bucket challenge? Okay, so do you guys know, or can you guess at this point, what is the ALS ice bucket challenge? Okay, now I already know what it is. It was a challenge that inspired people to raise money in order to fight Lou Gehrig's disease. So actually it was a good thing, but we're gonna learn more about it, so I don't want to explain too much, right? Anyhow, guys, we gotta take a look at some key vocab. We might not be able to get this done before the break, but we'll try our best here. So key vocab here, first one we have is interview, right? And we know the word interview is both a noun and also a verb, right? So if I interview you, of course that's like I'm pretending to be a journalist and I'm asking you questions. You know, how old are you? Where are you from? What was your primary school education like? Was there a shortage of teachers? I don't know. But yeah, interview is also a noun, so there's that as well. So I think you guys are okay with that. Let's move on to the next word. Really good adjective. We have the adjective creative, right? So creative, of course, if you are creative, that means you don't just think in a standard straight line, right? Creative people are able to create really interesting things, right? Like artists are very creative people. If you're a painter, maybe you're creative, that's great. You're a musician, you're a creative person. Or maybe you're even an architect, right? And you design creative buildings, that's really cool. Me personally, I am not very creative. I'm not good at creating really interesting pieces of art or music or anything like that. Unfortunately, yeah, just not a creative guy. But a similar word or a synonym of creative would be innovative. So of course, when we think of the word innovative or creative, we think of people like Steve Jobs, of course, very creative guy, or his partner. What was his name? Steve something. Anyhow, so, or Elon Musk, of course, the owner of Tesla. He is a very creative person. But we also know of lots of famous creative artists, you know, the Beatles, long time ago, they were a very creative rock band, etc., etc. So there's creative and innovative. But Let's take a look at our next term. Next term we have is cool down. Okay, if I want to cool down during the summer, I will go inside a bank because banks usually have really good air conditioning systems. Thank you, Royal Bank of Canada. Or in Korea, Uli Unhang, Uli our bank, right? Uli Unhang, Uli our bank. Maybe that's the meaning. Correct me if I'm wrong. But yeah, really good air conditioning systems, and I did that because I wanted to cool down. Now, cool down can have two meanings. It can mean physically I'm too hot and I want to lower the temperature, right? I want to cool down, I want to get cool, right? And I don't mean get cool like put on a leather jacket and put grease in your hair, right? I mean physically lower the temperature, right? But cool down also has another meaning. It can also mean relax, calm down. Hey, you need to cool down, right? You're too angry, right? So keep that in mind as well. It can mean physically get cooler, as in not be so hot anymore, or it can mean something similar to relax, or his more famous brother or cousin, chill out. Okay, well, chill out is more indirectly related. It kind of has a similar meaning. But remember, chill out can mean like relax at home and like watch TV and eat potato chips, right? But cool down and relax are, well, they can be used interchangeably. But cool down is usually used when somebody is kind of angry or too excited. Then we say cool down. But anyhow, let's move on, guys, to the next one. We have raise money. Sounds good to me. Now, we know raise, right? To raise something physically, right? Or to raise an animal, right? Your dog gives birth to a puppy and you raise that puppy, right? You take care of them. And that's an important thing because I hear a lot of students make that mistake, especially around an intermediate level. They say like, oh, grow a baby or grow a puppy or grow a kitten. But you don't say that. Grow is only with plants, right? Like I grow tomatoes or I grow cucumbers. But you don't say grow a cat or grow a cow. We say to raise animals. But anyhow, to raise money. So what would that mean? Would that mean you're taking $5 and you're going like this? Like, oh, $5, oh. No, it doesn't mean that. To raise money is to try to basically collect or gather money in order to give it to maybe a charity or maybe to start a business, right? So let's say, for example, I want to open a frozen banana business, right? I want to sell frozen bananas, right? But I don't have enough money. I don't have enough capital. I don't have any investment, right? I need to raise money. I need to go around and talk to people and say, hey, do you want to invest or give me money so that I can start my frozen banana business, right? And then my friend says, no, please leave my apartment. You can't use the bathroom. I'm like, what? But that's okay. But usually we use raise money when we talk about charities and NGOs. Of course, there are non-governmental organizations that seek to help people, like UNESCO, right? Trying to help find teachers for these poor countries like Malawi. So to raise money means they will go around and ask people for donations, right? Please give me a donation of money so we can help fight against diseases or something like that, right? So anyhow, you see a guy, right? But that one's dangerous. But anyhow, next one here, guys, we got is the Ice Bucket Challenge. All right, we already talked about that enough. We're gonna skip that. Okay, so next term we got here is to upload. An upload or to upload, which let's take a look at the verb form. So upload, of course, pretty simple because it's the opposite of download. To upload and to download. Now, everybody here knows what download is because you guys have done it many, many times. When you find something interesting on the internet or whatever, you download it and put it on your computer or your smartphone or your tablet, right? But then you also probably do a lot of uploading these days as well, right? Maybe you're the kind of person who likes to go out to a fancy restaurant and take pictures of the food you're eating and then put it on Insta, right? Or Instagram, because I heard that's really popular. So then you're taking that picture and you're putting it on the internet or Instagram or whatever, so you have to upload it. So they're just the opposite, you know, you upload, you put it on the internet, you download, you take it from the internet, whatever, right? But yeah, everybody likes to take pictures of food or puppies or other cute things, right? But not me, I'm a pessimist. But anyhow, all right, next one here, guys, is the word charity. I brought this word up a couple of times already. So charity is related to NGO, non-governmental organization. A charity is a non-profit organization. So let's write that down actually. Non-profit. Okay, so you might be thinking, what is profit? Well, profit is basically the amount of money you make, or a business can make. Well, it doesn't have to be a business, but usually a business. The amount of money a business makes after paying their expenses, right? They have to pay for renting, you know, some real estate, and pay for the raw material cost of, you know, the bananas for my frozen banana stand. But anyhow, after that, at the end of the month, if I made more money than I lost, that money is profit. And of course, all businesses want to make a profit, because if they don't, unfortunately, they might have to close. But an NGO or charity is a non-profit organization. And there are many famous charities from around the world, right? And many of those charities, you know, try to fight hunger, so they give free food to poor people or homeless people, or they try to, like UNESCO, for example, they try to find teachers to teach children in poor countries. They try to do things like that. So anyhow, non-profit organization. But you might be thinking, non-profit? Geez, I don't want to work for a non-profit. How will I make money, right? But anyhow, that's just a bad joke. On to the next one, we've got disease. I think, guys, we're okay with disease. We've already talked about it. We're going to be talking about Lou Gehrig's disease, and then of course right now there's the coronavirus disease. So moving on to the next one. Oh, good expression. I think we talked about this maybe not last week, but the week before. So this is popping up again. To go viral, right? Now you notice viral, it looks like virus, right? We know virus is something that spreads, right, and causes disease. But to go viral basically just means to spread very quickly. Ooh, that looks bad. To spread very quickly, right? So you guys know that if you're the kind of person that enjoys taking pictures of whatever dish you're having in a restaurant and you upload it on Instagram, you want many people to see it, right? You're hoping that picture goes viral because you want attention, or you want people to pay attention to what you're eating. I'm not sure why though, but that's, you know, something that I think a lot of women or certain people like to do, right? Anyhow, guys, so that's our key vocab. Lots of useful stuff. Some of it a little bit more difficult than other ones, but I think not too bad, right? But what we're gonna do, guys, is it looks like we're about to head into the break right now. So we're gonna take a break, but after the break, we're gonna listen to this Ice Bucket Challenge stuff. We're gonna look at some comprehension questions and some discussion questions, and then I think we'll call it a day. So I'll take a quick break. I gotta go to the bathroom, and maybe you do too. So see you in 10 minutes. we started the break, of course, we got done, well, we finished the warm-up questions and we looked at the key vocabulary, right? So now it's finally time to actually listen to this, and we're gonna find out what the Ice Bucket Challenge is, and then we're gonna look at some comprehension questions and some discussion questions. So let's just jump into it. Let's listen. We're gonna listen 2 times. So here we go. Here's the first time, guys.
Good morning, listeners. What a great sunny day today. Today I'm interviewing somebody who found a really creative way to cool down and raise money. Please welcome Pat Quinn, who will talk to us about the Als Ice Bucket Challenge. Hello, Mr. Quinn.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Yes, thank you for being here. Now, Mr. Quinn, can you tell us what the Als Ice Bucket Challenge is?
Certainly. The Ice Bucket Challenge is an internet challenge. People upload videos of themselves pouring buckets or large containers of ice water on themselves. Then, they must tell 3 friends to do the same thing. And all the money we collect is for the ALS charity.
Yes, it's quite an interesting challenge. But why ice water?
Well, ALS is a disease, and it sometimes makes people's bodies feel freezing, like they are in ice water. So, I thought it was a cool way to understand the disease better.
Yes, it definitely is. It went viral too. In the summer of 2014, there were millions of videos uploaded to YouTube. And how much money did you raise that year?
Over $115 million.
Amazing! The ALS charity was a huge success. It's part of American pop culture. Thank you for your time today, Mr. Quinn.
Thank you for having me. Okay, guys. All right, good. So you listened once, and I hope you were checking the comprehension questions while you were listening to this. Just in case you weren't, let's take a look at those comprehension questions before we listen a second time. So take a look at number 1, everybody. It says fill in the blanks. Today, I'm interviewing somebody who found a creative way to blank and blank. So when you're listening the second time, try to find out what that is, what goes in the blanks here. Okay, number 2, who created the ALS Ice Bucket Challenge, right? Who is the creator of this challenge? So you're just looking for somebody's name. And then number 3, what is the ALS Ice Bucket Challenge? So what actually is it? And what do people do for it? Okay, so that's gonna be a longer answer, right? So you're really gonna need to pay attention. Number 4, why do people use ice water? And number 5, in what year did the internet challenge go viral? All right, guys, so again, we're gonna listen one more time. You guys try to get those comprehension questions. Okay, but here we go again.
Good morning, listeners. What a great sunny day today. Today I'm interviewing somebody who found a really creative way to cool down and raise money. Please welcome Pat Quinn, who will talk to us about the ALS Ice Bucket Challenge. Hello, Mr. Quinn.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Yes, thank you for being here. Now, Mr. Quinn, can you tell us what the ALS Ice Bucket Challenge is?
Certainly. The Ice Bucket Challenge is an internet challenge. People upload videos of themselves pouring buckets or large containers of ice water on themselves. Then, they must tell 3 friends to do the same thing. And all the money we collect is for the ALS charity.
Yes, it's quite an interesting challenge. But why ice water?
Well, ALS is a disease, and it sometimes makes people's bodies feel freezing, like they are in ice water. So, I thought it was a cool way to understand the disease better.
Yes, it definitely is. It went viral too. In the summer of 2014, there were millions of videos uploaded to YouTube. And how much money did you raise that year?
Over $115 million.
Amazing! The ALS charity was a huge success. It's part of American pop culture. Thank you for your time today, Mr. Quinn.
Thank you for having me. Okay guys, so we listened a second time, and I think listening to it a second time, you guys were probably able to answer some of those comprehension questions, but let's take a look at those together. So, number 1 though was kind of fill in the blanks. Now actually, let me get a different marker. Let's see, is the other blue working well, or is it not? Okay, it is not. That's the answer. So anyhow, but taking a look at number 1, of course we have kind of a fill in the blanks one here. And it says, today I am interviewing, I am interviewing Pat Quinn. Oh, somebody who found a creative way to blank and blank. Okay, now that looks kind of messy, right? But let's try our best to fill this in. So today I'm interviewing someone who found a creative way to blank blank and blank blank. So actually, for both blanks here, we're looking for 2 words. So the first one is actually one of the key terms we were looking at before. It's a phrasal verb, which I should have mentioned before. I don't think I mentioned that it is a phrasal verb. But what we're looking for is cool down. So to reduce the temperature, cool down, right? And raise money is what we're gonna put in the second blank. So to cool down and raise money. Okay, good. Now if you guys got that before I wrote that in here, congratulations, you have been paying attention. Okay, number 2. Who created the Als Ice Bucket Challenge? Who was the creator, right? So we're just looking for a name, and that person's name was Pat Quinn, right? So P-A-T, and then Quinn, Q-U-I-N-N. Pat Quinn created the Ice Bucket Challenge. Okay, so good for Pat Quinn. Whoops. And there we go. Okie dokie. Let's take a look at our third comprehension question. Okay, so number 3, what is the Als Ice Bucket Challenge? What do people do for it? Okay, now this requires a much longer answer. But basically, it is an internet challenge. So I'm going to say it is an internet challenge. Now, no, actually, no, I'm going to continue to write, but we're actually going to come back to this in a second. It is an internet challenge where people upload videos of themselves pouring ice water on their heads. Now, wait a second, am I gonna stop here or? Okay. But I'm gonna continue because this is a long one. In order to raise money to help fight Lou Gehrig's disease or help fight ALS. Okay, so that's an incredibly long answer, but it's the only way to really do this. It is an internet challenge where people upload videos of themselves pouring ice water on their heads in order to raise money to help fight ALS. Okay, now one thing I wanted to look at though in this answer here was challenge. Now, I know you guys know what a challenge is, right? And we can describe things as being challenging, right? The English language can be a challenging language to learn, right? But sometimes people will say like, I challenge you. Right? And if somebody says, I challenge you, that means they kind of want to have a competition with you. So this Ice Bucket Challenge when people were doing this, they would also challenge other people to do this, so they would continue to raise money. So, and I guess I should add here, they would also, challenge 3 of their friends to do the same thing. And that's one of the reasons why this spread so quickly. It's because one person would do it and raise money to give to this charity organization to fight ALS, but then they would also challenge 3 of their friends, so then their friends would do it and they would challenge 3 people, and so on and so forth, and that's why they were able to raise a lot of money to fight ALS. Okay, but let's move on to number 4. It says here, why do people use ice water? Okay, well, there was a specific reason why they were using ice water, and it's related to the disease, right? Because ALS is a disease and it sometimes makes people's bodies feel like they're freezing, so they wanted to kind of copy that effect that ALS has, right? So basically our answer here is they used ice water because ALS makes people feel like they are freezing. Okay guys, and that's our answer for number 4. Number 5, I think this is kind of an easy question. It says here, in what year did this internet challenge go viral? Well, they mentioned it was in the summertime, and in the summertime of, I was almost right. I said like 5 years ago. It wasn't 5 years ago, it was 6 years ago in 2014. So I'm just gonna write here, in the summer of 2014, right? And I really do recall this ice bucket challenge because I remember, like, I don't know, watching YouTube videos around that time in 2014 and seeing that people were pouring buckets of ice water on themselves in order to fight ALS, which is a good thing. However, some people were definitely doing it to try to gain attention and maybe get more people to watch their videos or something like that. Alright guys, but that about does it for our comprehension questions. The last thing we got here is just some discussion questions, and actually I think I'm going to add a discussion question here as well, because this brings up an interesting topic, right? Talking about pop culture and internet trends, which is always kind of an interesting thing to talk about. But our discussion question here, the first one says, would you try the ALS Ice Bucket Challenge if your friends told you to? So how about you guys? Would you try this challenge? Would you take a bucket of ice cold water and pour it over your heads in order to try to raise money to help fight Lou Gehrig's disease? So think about it. Now, for me personally, would I do that? Well, it is for a worthy cause. Fighting Lou Gehrig's disease is a good thing, right? Lou Gehrig's disease affects millions of people around the world. It's very unpleasant. It's too bad that people develop Lou Gehrig's disease. So I guess, yeah, if a good friend of mine did challenge me to do the ice bucket challenge, and if it were in the summer, if it were really hot, and I thought, okay, well, all I have to do is pour ice water over my head, that's not so bad. Yeah, maybe I would do it, because I know that I'm trying to raise money for a good cause, right? Generally speaking, I am opposed to these kind of things because I don't like to publicly do things so often, even though I'm recording a live PST class right now. But I don't like to do things in public too much, and I don't like to seem like the kind of person who wants to get publicity, which is a good word, and I'm going to write down in a second here after I erase these comprehension questions. But how about you guys? Would you guys be willing to do the ice bucket challenge if a good friend of yours challenged you? Would you be willing to do that in order to raise money to help fight ALS? Now, I do want to write that word down though. Publicity. Publicity. What is publicity? That's a noun. Publicity is basically means being noticed or being watched or listened to, right? There's a lot of people out there, maybe on YouTube, Instagram, etc., social media, who like publicity. They want people to read their posts or watch their video, listen to their song, etc., look at the picture of food they took last night, something like that. But there are also a lot of people that don't like publicity, right? Even celebrities. But anyhow, just thought I would write that word down. Let's take a look at number 2. Even though this internet challenge raised a lot of money for ALS charities, do you think there are some problems with it? Now, that is a good question in my opinion. So overall, I do think the ALS Ice Bucket Challenge was a good thing because it raised a lot of money. Do I think there are some problems with it? Yes, I think there is definitely some problems with this thing. I think anytime these internet challenges go viral and spread around the world or spread around the country, I think there are some problems associated with these kind of things. Number 1, some people get too enthusiastic or too excited about this kind of thing, right? Because they think like, oh yeah, everybody's gonna watch my video, it's gonna be awesome, and then people are gonna subscribe to me, I'm gonna become a YouTuber or Instagram poster guy, girl thing. Influencer, I think they call them. Actually, that's a good term, I should write that down too. I think they call them influencers. An influencer or influencers. Anyhow, but of course some people don't think about these things enough before they do them. So I think around the time this happened in the summer of 2014, there were some people who would do the ice bucket challenge in a very awkward position or place, and they ended up injuring themselves and getting hurt, right? So that's one problem I have with it, is that nobody's checking to see, is everybody doing this safely? I know it sounds kind of stupid, like, how bad can it be pouring a, bucket of ice water on your head? But some people did manage to get hurt doing this. So it can be a little bit dangerous. And the other problem I have with this is that not everybody is doing this for charity. Like, they're not doing this specifically to raise money to fight ALS. I think a lot of people do this because they want publicity and they like being noticed. And not that that's a big problem for me, but I find that kind of, well, that's a turn off for me. I don't like people who are seeking attention too much, generally speaking. Yes. Anyhow, those are the 2 problems I have with it, is that, some people got injured, nobody's really checking. But the other problem is that people were using it just to gain publicity and seek attention. Now, I do want to take a look at this word here, influencer. An influencer. So this is a noun. The reason why I brought this up is because it's kind of related to a YouTuber. Everybody knows what a YouTuber is. It's somebody who has become maybe a little bit famous or infamous, maybe for something bad, but usually famous for posting some videos or uploading some videos on YouTube. But an influencer is, I believe, what we call people who have a lot of influence over or through social media, right? So of course everybody knows that Instagram has become an extremely popular smartphone application in the past couple of years, and there are lots of younger people especially who have become influencers because so many people look at their posts or their photos. So there's a lot of influencers that travel around the world or take nice pictures of food or something like that. And I think some of these people are not bad people. They're passionate about what they're doing. That's awesome. But a lot of these influencers also give young people a lot of, in my opinion, stupid ideas about what they can do in the future. And so I heard that in Canada, but also probably your country as well, Brazil, China, Mongolia, Vietnam, Korea, Japan, whatever, that a lot of younger people, when you ask them the question, what do you want to be when you grow up, a lot of younger people say YouTuber or Instagram influencer, right? Because they think, wow, look at that lifestyle. It's so glamorous, it's so fun, like it looks like they're so rich. But the reality is a lot of influencers are not very rich, and actually it takes them a really long time to set up this photo. And I think a lot of them use Photoshop in order to make things appear to be better. So I don't think these people have a very good influence on young people. So anyhow, that's just my opinion. But yeah, influencer, kind of an interesting term. And it's related to, of course, the adjective form influential, right? If somebody or something is influential, they can influence somebody else, right? And of course, we were talking about good teachers in the first class we had today. And I think a good teacher, that's another good characteristic I should have brought up, a good teacher can be influential in a positive way. They can influence students to seek their passion, right? And then maybe they know John is good at math, so they influence John to be passionate about math and to become a mathematician or a economics major or something like that, right? So anyhow, yeah, my main problem with social media is related to influence. But what I wanted to do, guys, is I wanted to add another question to this discussion here, and I'm gonna write that question on the board because this is all about pop culture, right? So we're talking about pop culture, and my question is pretty simple. What is pop culture like in your country? So what is pop culture like in your country? So we're talking about pop culture, and we're talking about the Als Ice Bucket Challenge, right? But what is pop culture like in your country, in Korea, in Japan, in Brazil, etc., etc., etc.? But yeah, maybe what is pop culture, right? So pop culture is anything that's kind of related to media and trends and fashion and music and this kind of stuff. If we think about the past 100 years, I think without a doubt, the country that has the most influential pop culture would be the United States, right? Because everybody wants to wear jeans and t-shirts, and everybody listens to rock and roll and hip hop, etc., almost regardless of where you live, right? So American pop culture has been very influential. But now, with the internet, we can see different pop culture trends in different countries. And I know that, for example, Korean pop culture has been pretty popular for, I don't know, 10, 15-ish years, maybe a little bit longer. It's been very Korean pop culture has been pretty popular in Asia and some other parts around the world. Well, even now, of course, younger Canadian teenagers and American teenagers, not many of them, but quite a few do want to listen to K-pop, like Bang Bang, or no, Big Bang, or other K-pop bands. Anyhow, so yeah, my question is, what is pop culture like in your country? So I want you guys to think about that, and I'm gonna think of what pop culture is like in Canada and try to give you a very brief idea. So remember, cultural products, music, art, literature, fashion, dance and film, cyber culture. you know, pop culture includes a lot of stuff, right? Now, if you were in Canada, especially in regards to fashion, you would probably think, wow, Canadian people are not fashionable. And you would basically be right. We are not a very fashionable people. But also, if you go to the United States, you would also notice, like, wow, Americans are not as fashionable as they are in the movies. And that's true, right? But if you came to Vancouver, for example, there are fashion trends in Vancouver. For example, I think Vancouver basically started leggings, or the idea of wearing leggings and yoga pants, which I think is just terrible, and I really wish that would end as soon as possible. Maybe it has ended, I'm not sure, I don't really pay attention. But if you wear yoga pants, that's great, good for you, yoga's awesome. But what is pop culture? Oh, so what I was saying, but fashion in Canada, or in Vancouver specifically, if you want to go to the most fashionable place, you have to go to East Vancouver and you have to check out Commercial Drive. But when you go there, you might think like, oh, what? I don't see any fashion here, because a lot of the people look kind of poor and their jeans are ripped or their t-shirt has a stain on it. But what you might not realize is that this is actually Canadian fashion. It's cool for younger people in Canada to basically appear like they are poor. That's a popular fashion trend, I am not kidding you. Having ripped jeans and looking kind of dirty is kind of cool in Canada. Other than that, our standard fashion in Canada is kind of based upon something called lumberjacks. And lumberjacks are people who cut down trees. So yeah, we have a weird idea of fashion in Canada. But overall, pop culture in my country, in Canada, is heavily influenced by American pop culture. So if there's some kind of internet trend in the United States, it very quickly comes up to Canada, and whether that's music or fashion, we do follow a lot of American trends. But thinking about your countries, I'm not sure if that's the case. Of course, I've traveled in Japan and Korea. I know the sense of fashion is pretty different from the United States, maybe sometimes influenced by it, but also these days, sometimes Korean or Japanese fashion trends do influence trends in the United States or Canada, and in regards to Brazil or Chile or Colombia, I don't really know. Anyhow, guys, so I think what we're gonna do is we're gonna stop here. Now, we do have some extra time. We've got about 20 plus minutes here. And what we can do is kind of get started with the very last thing we had for today for our elective. And that was talking about hear and listen. Now, obviously, though, we don't have enough time to do this. So what I would like you guys to do is don't look at the first page. Please look at the second page. And let's take a look at some of the things here, because some of them are kind of useful, right? And I'm just going to erase this here. So we have a couple of idioms related to the verb to listen, but also to hear, right? And we have 4 of them, and they're pretty good. So let's listen. Haha, right? So first one we have here is to listen in. Okay. So they say that's not exactly an idiom, actually, but to listen in is kind of a phrasal verb, to listen in, right? So if somebody says, hey, listen in, what they're saying to you basically is like, listen carefully. So number 1 here says, hear or overhear the conversation of others, to eavesdrop. It is also put as listen in on, as in, she listened in on her parents and learned that they were planning a surprise party. Number 2, tune in and listen to a broadcast, as in, were you listening in the other night when they played Beethoven's Fifth? Okay, so actually this is addressing the 2 different uses of listen in, right? One of the meanings of this is basically listen closely, but that is related to the second example. Listen carefully or listen closely. But the other meaning is completely different, and that was addressed in the first example, and that means to eavesdrop, right? But eavesdrop, it's basically to listen, or actually I should say to secretly listen to a conversation that you shouldn't. Okay, so two uses to this one here, to listen in, right? So listen in on is how I usually use it, but if I listen in on my parents, that means I'm kind of secretly listening to what they're saying, because maybe they're talking about me and they're like, oh yeah, we have to send Allan to military school because his behavior is so bad. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm listening in on my parents, right? But it can also just mean to listen carefully. So somebody might just say, listen in, right? Listen carefully. And last night I listened in on the news because they were giving updates about the coronavirus situation, right? So listen in is pretty good, but remember, it can be listen in or listen in on, right? To listen in on somebody's conversation. You shouldn't listen in on your neighbor's conversation because maybe you don't want to know what they're talking about, right? Okay, guys, next one here, the idiom here, this is good. Listen to reason. Okay, to listen to reason. Now we know what reason is, right? So this means to pay heed to sensible advice or argument. As in, we can't let him rush into that job. It's time he listened to reason. Okay, so think about the beginning of this again. Pay heed to sensible advice or argument. Okay, if somebody says, maybe you tell somebody your business plan. You're like, hey Dad, I'm gonna start a frozen banana business, right? Hey, would you like to invest money in my business? And your dad asks you, like, what do you know about business? And you say, not very much. And your dad says, where are you gonna open this place? And you say, well, I don't know. And then your dad says, do you like bananas? And you say, no, actually, I hate bananas, right? And then your dad says, okay, actually, I think this is a bad idea. You need to listen to reason and, have a normal job, right? So when somebody says listen to reason, what they're saying to you is like, try to think sensibly. Be realistic. Don't be a dreamer. Listen to what I'm saying. Listen to my advice or listen to my argument, right? And that's what it says here. Pay heed to sensible advice or argument. So this is something we often use maybe if we are having an argument with somebody and we think they're being unreasonable, right? Now there's two good terms. There's reasonable and there's unreasonable. Now if you are being reasonable, people can reason with you, right? And the meaning of that is that you guys can have a good conversation. You can have a good discussion based upon facts. You guys are not lying to each other, you're not getting too emotional, and you're not being stupid, right? If you are being unreasonable, you are not listening to reason. Now, a lot of times when people have been drinking alcohol or doing drugs, they will be unreasonable. They won't really listen to you, right? And when somebody is being unreasonable, that's when we use this idiom. We say, hey, listen to reason. You need to stop thinking about your frozen banana stand business. This is a bad idea, it's gonna fail, and you're gonna lose a lot of money and a lot of bananas, right? So you better just go work at, some regular business, right? So listen to reason. Very often used by parents, right? When they're talking to their children. Children can often be unreasonable, right? Like, I want a cookie. Well, you can't have a cookie. I want a cookie. You can't have a cookie. Hey, listen to me. You need to listen to reason. You cannot have a cookie. All right, guys, but next one we got here is, it's so quiet you could hear a pin drop. Okay, Now, I wish I had a pin right now on me. I don't. But if I had one, I would drop it on the floor and we'd try to see if we could listen to it. If you say it's so quiet you could hear a pin drop, the meaning of this is just that it's very, very, very quiet, right? So if you look at the explanation here, it says, it's very quiet, as in, before the judge made his final decision, the courtroom was so quiet, you could hear a pin drop. So think about that situation, right? There's a judge, the judge has come to a conclusion. They're going to pass judgment on this person. They're going to decide whether they are innocent or guilty. And they're about to say it. And then the whole courtroom kind of, and it's totally silent, right? And it's so quiet that if you dropped a pin, and of course this is not a pin, but this is a pen, you know, everybody can hear that, right? So this expression is just used to really emphasize that some place is very, very, very quiet, right? So, I don't know, I might use this for example, like let's say you're in a very awkward situation, right? You're in a really, really, really awkward situation. And I keep using that word awkward, so I'm gonna write that down. Awkward. And the meaning of that is basically uncomfortable. But like socially uncomfortable. So let's say you go out for dinner with your good friends Brian and Sally. Brian and Sally are maybe married or have been dating for a very long time. And you go out with them and they start fighting, and then Brian says like, I never loved you anyhow, Sally. And then everybody's really quiet and you're like, oh my God, this is so awkward. And also, it's so quiet you could hear a pin drop. Okay, all right guys, next term we have here is to hear someone out. This is a good expression, I use this quite often. To hear someone else out means you should listen to the other side of the argument, right? Or give this person time to explain why they did something, right? So the explanation here is to listen to someone else's side of an argument, as in, I broke up with my boyfriend after he lied to me, but I agreed to meet with him today to hear him out, right? So she broke up with her boyfriend because the boyfriend lied to her, right? The boyfriend promised he would not try to start a frozen banana stand business, but behind her back, he was raising money to try to start this frozen banana stand business, even though it's obviously a bad idea. But anyhow, this girl has decided to meet with him today to hear him out. So she's gonna hear him out. She's going to listen to his side of the story, his argument, right? So again, this is something we often use when we are in an argument and maybe we think the other person is being unreasonable. We think they're not really listening to us. We would say to them like, hey, come on, hear me out. Listen to my side of the story, right? Why won't you hear me out? So if you're a married man, trust me, this is a really useful expression, right? Like, hey, honey, or whatever, why don't you hear me out? And then like, no, and like, oh, okay, all right. Anyhow, that's a bad joke. Yeah, to hear someone out, to listen to their side. Okay guys, but we also have some discussion questions here, and maybe you guys could take a quick look at these with me, and we can I'll try to think of some quick answers because we're running out of time really quickly here. But we've got some good questions. Number one, what kind of music do you like? What kind of music do you not like, and why? Okay, well, what kind of music do I like? Well, I like a lot of rock and roll music, specifically, I kind of like pop rock, I guess. Rock and roll or pop rock, and yeah, I like lots of other kinds of music. I do like some kind of rap or soul music, or I can't say it's my favorite genre, but I do like some of it. And I like classical sometimes, depends, right? I like lots of different kind of music, but I don't like mumble rap, which I think became popular about a year or two ago. Mumble rap is when I think rappers are like mumbling, like so yeah, that's the kind of music I don't like. I don't like mumble rap. I don't really like heavy metal too much. I did when I was younger, not so much anymore. And I don't like I don't like punk rock very much because I'm too old for that now. I don't like young people who seem to be so angry because it just doesn't make sense to me. If I could talk to them, I would say, hey, you need to listen in and hear me out. Stop being so angry. Anyhow, number 2. Who is your favorite singer or band and why? Okay. My favorite singer, my favorite band. That's a tough one. My favorite singer or band of all time. I'd have to say my favorite band is called Radiohead. And you guys might know them. They're a British alternative rock band. Yeah, you can still find their songs in like karaoke rooms. Their most famous song is called Creep. But they've been popular for a long time. They make really good music. I think they're very interesting. They're my favorite band. But my favorite singer is... Well, this is a boring answer, but my favorite singer is Michael Bublé, or Michael Bubble, because he is from Burnaby, which is next to Vancouver in British Columbia, and he has a very nice voice, and he makes really good Christmas music. So if you're in Canada or the United States during Christmas, you will hear Michael Bublé. He's a pretty good singer. No, not pretty good. He's the best. Okay, number 3. Are you a good singer? Oh God, no. No, I'm terrible. I think my voice is awful. So I think if I ever listened to myself singing a song, I would just be too embarrassed. So anyhow, I'm terrible. I'm a terrible singer. Anyhow, number 4, can you concentrate on other things when you're listening to music? Yes, I can. I often listen to music and do marking or work on writing a paper or something like that. So I can. Or I like to listen to music while I am doing the dishes because doing the dishes is such a tedious task, right? Nobody likes doing the dishes or throwing out the garbage or something like that. So I like to listen to music while doing those things because then I don't have to think about them too much. Number 5, can you play a musical instrument? If so, what do you play? Yes, I can. When I was in high school, I played the drum set for our high school band. I haven't played the drum set for a very long time, but I think I can still do it, and I used to play piano a little bit when I was a kid, but actually I think I'm pretty terrible at piano. Anyhow, next one. Do you enjoy music videos? Do I enjoy music videos? Yeah, sure. Some music videos are really, really good. I can't think of a music video that I have recently enjoyed. Let me think. No, I can't think of one. However, yes, there are many music videos that I have enjoyed over the years. But some of them, I think the majority of them are garbage and should be burned, right? Just kidding. But I think, yeah, most music videos, of course, I don't enjoy, but some, yes. Number 7, what do you think of gossip? Do you think it's enjoyable to listen in on people's lives or issues? Ooh, that's a tough one. Generally in Canada, or maybe in Western culture, and I think actually this is not just Western culture, but I think around the world, we tend to think that women like to gossip more than men. But I think men do gossip too, it's just the topic of the gossip is different. What do you think of gossip? I think gossip is not something good that we should be talking about. Like, I don't think we should be talking about our coworker's life or personal life too much. But, you know, this is something that people do talk about, and it's easy to share experiences or get to know somebody by gossiping about another person, which is unfortunate, but it happens. I think if we're gossiping about somebody who is a celebrity, that's okay because they want publicity anyhow. Do you think it's enjoyable to listen in on people's lives or issues? Do I think it's enjoyable to listen in on people's lives or issues? Maybe sometimes, but I don't want to know too much. And I feel bad if I listen in on someone's conversation and find out they have a major personal problem. You know, that's not my business. I shouldn't be listening in. Okay. Number 8, do you like to do things spontaneously or do you like to listen to reason first? Ooh, that's a really good question actually. Now, spontaneously. If you do something spontaneously, it means you take action without thinking. And I think sometimes this is a really good thing, to act spontaneously. You see an opportunity, boom, you grab it, right? I think that's really good. And I think some people are able to do that. But I think in a lot of cases that's also a bad idea as well. It really just depends. Personally, if I have to make a decision about something, like a big decision, about career, or like I'm buying a major purchase, like getting something expensive, I like to listen to reason first and see what other people think of that possible opportunity or that purchase or whatever, and then I like to make up my mind. But I do think sometimes I might take too long and then sometimes I lose the opportunity, right? However, yeah, overall I like to listen to reason first, and sometimes I try to be spontaneous, right? I think that's a common complaint from girlfriends and wives, like, you used to be more spontaneous, right? You used to like suddenly buy me flowers or buy me something, right? And you're like, yeah, I used to. So yeah, but anyhow, being spontaneous, sometimes a good thing. Last question, guys. Do you prefer to hear people out if they have made a mistake, or do you prefer to burn bridges? Woo, that's also a really good question, actually. Now the last part of that question, prefer to burn bridges. So if you think about that, burn bridges, right? So you got a bridge and you burn it. The meaning of that is like to kind of break, sever, cut a relationship with another person, right? So maybe some friend of yours, you told him or her a secret and they let the cat out of the bag and they told a bunch of people your secret, and then you find out about this and you're like, what the hell, man? Why would you do that? You got two options, right? You can either maybe hear them out, listen to their side of the argument, and then maybe forgive them, right? Or you can burn your bridges with them, right? Let's burn that bridge. And you could totally break, sever, cut that relationship with that person. So, do you prefer to hear people out if they made a mistake, or do you prefer to burn bridges? For me, it depends. Like, I'm sure it depends for you. If this person is close to me, or if I'm thinking rationally, I will hear them out and think about it, right? If they're a family member, family is family. You can choose your friends, but you can't choose your family, right? So if it is one of my family members, I will hear them out, unless they did something really, really awful, but they haven't done anything really, really awful. But if I don't know them too well and they did something bad to me, maybe I will, unfortunately burn my bridges with them and we will part ways. But hopefully I will forgive them in the future, as I would hope they would forgive me if I did something bad to them. Alright guys, but I think that's about it for today. My throat is killing me now. But yeah, we went over some good idioms here, and that was a good discussion. So much good vocabulary today. So a lot of the stuff that I wrote on the board, I hope you guys took notes. If you don't completely understand the terms, please find out what they are. Try to incorporate them into your daily English practice, right? And try to use them when you're speaking with others, because that is a lot of good vocab. But I'm gonna stop for today. You guys will see Melanie tomorrow. And I know that also you guys have a homework assignment, so try to get that done. And I will see you another time. So you guys have a good night and a good dinner, if that's what you're having, or breakfast or lunch or whatever. Okay, all right, bye guys. See you later.